excited to introduce my first guest today. This is a cool story. He's doing lots of different things and employing lots of people, which is something we really care about. Please welcome to the show, Matej Harangozo. He is a very active entrepreneur running several different businesses. He built a company called Green Knew It from the ground up, with starting right off of his credit cards, built it to 50 plus employees with $5 million in revenue. He has also been a franchise owner and employs 35 young employees in the Baltimore area. And my goodness, Baltimore needs every job it can get. But today, what we're excited to talk about is a new thing that he's doing, and it's designed to change the music industry and to introduce new revenue streams for independent artists, which is something I think is so desperately needed. Matej, welcome to the show. How are you doing today?
Thank you, Jim. I'm doing great. Thank you for that introduction. But, you know, weather could be a little bit better in Maryland, but other than that, I can't really complain at all.
Yeah, it's cold and dreary here, too, today. I think it's just cold and dreary on the East Coast today. So fall is upon us.
Yep, that can say that for sure.
All right, tell us about the music industry. What's wrong now that you're trying to solve?
I would say multiple things are wrong from my view. The way I got started in it is that when I had Green Knew It at its highest peak in terms of revenue and, you know, company performance, I had a little bit more time as an executive to focus on my other passions. So I always wanted to get into the music industry. So I started out by first producing music, you know, as a hobbyist for fun, which very quickly turned into my entire basement being a, you know, legit studio. I dumped a lot of money into it. So I started having a lot of talented artists come through the studio, hired a few, local engineers, and that was sort of me dipping my toes into the industry. So, you know, studying, anytime I go into a particular industry, I like to study as much as possible. So I had the opportunity to partner up with one of my early partners down in Atlanta. I was able to meet a bunch of different executives from different industries. And at the time, they treated me as a, you know, just respected entrepreneur in a different industry. So they were sort of willing to open up. They didn't necessarily think I was going to come into the music industry, become a competitor, or, you know, just anything like that. So they kind of viewed me a little differently. So I was able to get a lot of information. So for one, you know, as you guys probably know, the music industry has been given bad deals for a very long time. I think it's a top-heavy industry, meaning that it's largely controlled by the top three, major studios at this point. And the industry itself doesn't promote or condone do-it-yourself models, or basically, you know, independent models, because obviously it takes away from the pie of the major labels. So, you know, there's a lot of predatory practices that happen, of course. So that's one thing. Second thing is that when I got into the music industry as an independent company, and I had my first artist that me and my early business partner, were willing to invest some money behind, I knew that marketing and branding and promo was very important. You know, I wasn't naive thinking we would just put up a hit song on SoundCloud or YouTube and it would go viral. So anyways, we hired a few companies early on that would do digital marketing or PR. And I did not realize the level of scamming that was going on in the music industry. The malpractices in terms of just companies running around saying they can do X, Y, Z for you, but they don't deliver. They sort of just take your money. And then when they do deliver, they give you either fake bot traffic or traffic from foreign countries, right? And me being a businessman and building multiple businesses beforehand, it just didn't make sense to me. I'm like, how can you build a true business and start selling merchandise and doing shows and getting in front of real eyes and ears with having a perception built, brand online? It didn't make sense. So it sort of pissed me off in a good way, to where, you know, I spent good 30 grand of learning what not to do. And then I said, you know, at some point when I'll have the time and resources to fully dive in full time into the music industry, I'm going to change that. And I'm doing it now with, you know, my digital marketing company called Digital Science Media, which is a subsidiary to Open Source Entertainment, which is what I'll name my label when I created in 2013. Like I said, I was only, one toe into the industry, so it wasn't anything I was focusing on full time, but I named it Open Source Entertainment because I wanted to sort of infuse a similar culture like open source coding has in the software world, where you
I
share
get that. That
resources and
makes a
all
lot
that.
of sense.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to interrupt, Matej, but that makes a lot of sense. I just wanted to throw that out. So keep going. Keep explaining the model. I'm fascinated.
Okay. Yeah. So Open Source Entertainment is a artist incubator, which is still sort of building out its early, curriculum and sort of the model. And I'm going to be looking for I'm in talks with a few investors, but I want to do the model right. We're potentially going to be partnering up with some universities first to deploy the curriculum. But it's just like a regular business incubator, except the core focus is the music industry, and not just artists of all genres, but I want the artists to also be in the same building as the next guy that's going to create the next Spotify, or the next SoundCloud, like a music industry related app, or something in VR, virtual reality related to music industry, or hologram. So that's Open Source Entertainment. That's still something I'm pursuing, and it's going to be a major company for me in the next few years. But digital science media is where the immediate demand came from as I was building my brand in the music industry. And at this point, we got close to 40 clients, and it's going very well. We're just doing honest, results-driven digital marketing for independent artists and their teams. And not only that, but we help them understand what they can do with the data that they get back from advertising online.
All right, very interesting. I have hired the same people as you do who give you a bunch of BS results, and all of the hits are from outside of the United States. So I know that guy. I hired him too. I love the idea of it being just honest social media and no BS behind it, right?
Yeah.
So how do you deliver that for a client? You say you have about 40 clients now. Say I'm a band and I come to you. What are you going to do for us?
So first of all, we want to understand who is your particular demographic that your content really resonates with. And again, who are they in the US and Canada? I'm assuming that's where you want to build your business first. If you tell me you want to go to foreign countries and advertise there because you can actually go there to perform and sell merchandise down the line or whatever, it makes sense. We'll do that as well. But first thing we do is trying to figure out who is your core audience, because it's not as just simple as saying, oh, like you, for example, Jim, I have a radio show that talks about entrepreneurship, so I'm only going to, target people that enjoy entrepreneurship related things online. You could reach a good amount of people that way, but we get way, way deeper. We look at other interest levels. Like, we basically want to know everything about your consumer. If you're an artist coming to me, I want to know where your consumer hangs out at, where they eat, what type of food do they eat, what type of clothes do they wear, who do they consider to be influencers, and getting all this data together, which we can do generally in month one through some, call it A/B testing marketing. We now have a few core groups of audiences that we can put your music and your brand in front of, and then we scale it up. So month 2, 3, and 4 is really focusing on scaling up that advertising. And as we are building out your fan base online on these various platforms, then we also deploy a strategy a little bit down the line, probably 60 to 90 days out, where we start converting that online fan base that we created for you into real revenue through, either helping to sell merchandise, giving the artists the ability to sell tickets at their local areas, or nationally, whatever the case is. And also, not just that, but being able to repackage that data and maybe pitch it to investors, other companies that are willing to do sponsorships. And lastly, at the end of the day, none of us own Instagram, Facebook, or YouTube. So at some point as a company, you have to think about, can I somehow extract the information of all my fans out of these platforms so I can own them in my own database, in my own email lists, in my own spreadsheet, and have their phone numbers and so on and so forth. So that's something that we focus on down the line as we build up this real fan base. But hopefully that wasn't too long-winded, but that's essentially what we do.
Okay, so that's something I've had problems with. Pulling the data out of these platforms, I've never had success with. As a matter of fact, I've had huge failures with it. Even with LinkedIn, to download your email, which they make it so hard to do now, to download all of your email addresses, you only get 1 out of 3 people that you're connected with, and I found that half of those didn't work. So I ended up with 1 out of 6 being successful. which is going, you try to import that database into MailChimp or something, and
Yep.
the whole thing blows up, and MailChimp sends you dirty emails. I've had zero success with that. How are you doing it better?
So, first of all, 1 out of 6, if you're saying 1 out of 6 emails that you extract from LinkedIn will actually respond back to you, engage with you, that's not a horrible, engagement rate. But, essentially you are extracting the information without letting your followers or your connections, you're not letting them know about it most of the time. So we are more personable. I mean, it could be as simple as just messaging your followers back and say, hey, I really appreciate you following me. If you didn't know, we have exclusive content here, here, and here. If you like to stay in touch that way, feel free to, DM me your email or your phone number, because we also send out exclusive content to our true fans. So we try to be more personable, right? But it is a numbers game, like you said. At the end of the day, whoever you have, let's say in your MailChimp, you want to sort of send enough messages to be slightly annoying to get the people that don't want to be there out of there as fast as possible, right? Because it costs you money to keep a 10,000 people email list, and that's not really being utilized. But you also want to be given enough value to your true fans and consumers where they don't mind, getting an email twice a week, and they actually appreciate the content that you give them. So that's just one simple way. We also do contests where we encourage people to sign up for a separate like a way to win a particular prize or a signed book, but not a book, but like a signed exclusive CD or album that the artist put out. So there's different ways, but we try to make it more personable. We try not to make it so cold, just as pulling a email list out of LinkedIn or some Facebook somehow, and then expect for those people to be like, oh, hey, I was expecting your email, because they were not notified about that. So we try to set the expectations of their fans, and that's how we do a better job at that.
I do agree with that. That makes a lot of sense. So, well done. How do you then convert them into a paying customer? You said that 2 or 3 months down the road you try to monetize the list. What are your secrets there?
So first of all, when we start marketing for our clients day one, we're marketing their brand and sending a lot of their traffic to Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music, wherever they fans can stream the music. So the client starts getting paid essentially from day one, even though it takes some time to collect the revenue from Spotify. But Spotify and YouTube revenues are pennies on the dollar. It's not much, especially in the very beginning. So the way we monetize it later is we can put our client on the app like a superphone, which is an app developed by Ryan Leslie, also a big guy in the music industry. And it's also like the community app. You might have heard of him, but it's essentially a MailChimp equivalent, but you collect people's phone numbers and you engage with them, right? So imagine if we can convert, you have 10,000 followers in Los Angeles, and we can convert 3,000 of them to actually give you their phone numbers because they like what you do, they want to stay in touch, and so on and so forth. And now, let's say you can convert 3,000 of those people by just sending them a text 2 weeks prior to your show or a month prior to your show, and you can convert 10% of them. That's 300, that's 30 people. I'm sorry, 3,000, 10% is 300. So there's 30 people. Imagine if you can actually do that to a venue, and you do that once or twice. Now you have a lot of leverage with other venues. And imagine walking to another venue to say, hey, Mr. Venue owner number one, what is it worth to you if I bring you 300 21-plus-year-olds that want to see me perform and buy drinks at night at your bar and in your venue? Now we're talking. That's one example of how to convert that true fan base into a local show, if we can identify where the audiences are. Another way we could do it is we take the prior success of advertising, let's say, an artist's music video on YouTube, or growing their Instagram account or whatnot, to package that data, approach a company that, for example, sells jeans, that wants to also target the same audience or fan base we've just built for our client. And once they see, especially when our company presents it to this business, that look, these are all real people, all from the US, they all are raging about, our artist, they love what he or she does. So would you want to put your brand in front of their audience? And then we can negotiate different deals. It could be a sponsorship, artists can get free clothing. It could be, a situation where they maybe put up a couple $1,000s to do the next music video, or put them behind the next project, especially if they can see results of what we've been able to do with the past thing. So it doesn't come right away. And when I say 90 days, we're talking like fairly substantial budgets, but some independent labels can afford it. We're talking about spending a couple $1,000s, 3 to 5 thousand a month on cultivating this online fan base and audience in order to have enough data, enough engagement, enough movement to approach businesses where it makes sense to them to partner up or endorse or things like that. So there's a lot of different ways, but those are just kind of the two obvious that I sort of named.
Now, are you only interested in doing this in the music space? Because, I mean, a lot of what you're describing, I would be interested in. A lot of other business types, verticals would be interested in. Someone who's doing this in an honest way and comes right out and says, the big scam is you get 5,000 hits from Eastern Europe and you didn't want that. And I'm here to stop that. That's a good sales pitch.
So I'm glad you asked that. And we do provide the service for the entertainment industry. So somebody like you, because you have a radio station, yes, we could do that for your company as well. A comedian is a good candidate. We're going to be getting into sports players. We already have a few because it's sort of a similar, the brand awareness the blueprint is very same. But I specifically do not want to venture out, at least not right now, into other industries. For example, like I'm not going to do this for lawyers or real estate agents or orthopedic surgeons or doctor practice. And here's the reason why. When I had Renew It, again, I hired a digital marketing company to help us get our brand out there. And this was one of the companies that said, oh yeah, you're doing this for your business, we could take you on. The problem with that is, let's be real, you should be an subject matter expert in the particular industry. Every industry has different nuances. The way consumers behave in the music industry, getting or consuming a damn near free product and then engaging on a different level is not the same type of target customer or consumer behavior you would have if you're advertising a law firm. So if you hire a company that's stretched too thin and they say we could support any type of business model, that's a bunch of BS to me, and they're not going to do a good job. At best, they're going to do a mediocre job because they don't truly know. They haven't done this 100 times. They don't know what they don't know yet, about the consumer base. So to answer your question, we're in entertainment right now because it's a very similar blueprint than a music artist. And we are going to expand to other verticals. I think sports are next. And then what we will also be doing is that, look, artists sell merchandise. So merchandise is apparel most of the time. So we will be focusing on e-commerce platforms that sell apparel and merchandise. Anything that an artist would sell, we can focus on that because, again, we already know how to do that. And by the way, my second business that I own now is a software development company called Codedaemon, which is specifically only focusing on the e-commerce industry. So only dealing with Shopify, I'm not sure if you're familiar with those platforms, but I like to niche it down. And one thing I learned as an entrepreneur over the years is that if you try to accommodate everyone with too many services, too many moving parts, you're not going to be able to scale your company, and you're not going to deliver tremendous value to your customers. So, entertainment industry is what we are for right now. But somebody like yourself, if you have a radio station or a podcast, or you just create digital content to entertain, we could definitely handle that, with no problem.
Matej, talk to me about being a recent immigrant to the United States. I know you moved here when you were 12. Welcome. What do you think about Americans who can't find a job, or Americans who say there's no opportunity out there?
I think that's crazy, in my opinion. Look, I do strongly believe that America is a land of opportunity. What I will say, and that I've noticed this just being multicultural, going back every year to see my family in Europe and my father living in China. I've had the pleasure to travel the world because of my father. But I think that Americans, despite all the circumstances we're dealing with, and the racial tensions and the difficulties that minorities have specifically in this country, despite that, in my opinion, at least based on where I came from, a lot of people in this country are sort of complacent. They feel like because we are in the U.S., you're born in the U.S., you should have access to certain things. And I don't, I come from more of a socialist government in Europe, so I do believe that basic rights like healthcare and things like that should be a right and should be taken care of for you. But I think the complacency is an issue, and I think where it comes from is the lack of education. Now, on the university level, don't get me wrong, U.S. has some of the best schools in the world, but the public education, I think, needs a lot of improvement. That's one of the things I'm going to be focusing on, not just with my incubator, but that's kind of like my legacy long-term business model. Is that let me give you an example. When I came to America, I finished 5th grade in Slovakia. And I moved to Howard County in Maryland, which is supposed to be one of the best school systems in the nation. Year after year, Howard County is rated as one of the best school systems in the nation. So I went to schools there, and I didn't learn anything new until I went to college. And that's sad to say. So you can only imagine what, kids in Baltimore or Detroit or other places are dealing with. But, America is the line of opportunity. I understand we're going through a pandemic. It's something we haven't dealt before, but there's opportunities everywhere. I mean, you can just having a smartphone in your pocket, and if you're diligent enough and you focus on the right things and you take care of yourself, you can create a business out of your phone. There's so many examples out there today of every color, race, or, background of people in America creating millions out of just being authentic and creating services that are true to them and doing it off their phones, literally. So I think there's a lot of opportunity, but I know it's a hard time. So, hopefully people will wake up to the fact that, anything's possible if you focus on the right stuff and don't get sidetracked by all these things that, we can get sidetracked from in America.
How do you know what to focus on? How do you focus on the right thing?
So, it's part experience. I think I'm fortunate that I just love to learn. Like, if you ask me, like, what I do for hobbies, like, I just consume books on entrepreneurship. Like, I love science. It's weird, I love architecture. I used to be in the, modifying cars. But that is a great question, right? Especially today when we got so many quote unquote fake news. Like, how do you determine what's credible? So the education is important. Look, I went to school for mechanical engineering in college. And even though I dropped out my 4th year, I'm so glad I went through all the sciences, all the physics, the chemistry, all the maths you can possibly take. And I say that because it sort of helps me understand the world better. So you can't really feed me BS. I'm a harder person to feed BS to. I dissect everything. I try to see, okay, does this even sound plausible? So, but if you don't know that, it's unfortunate because if it sounds correct, you may believe it. And, that's how even myself became a victim to these, marketing services like you have to say, oh yeah, you're talking the talk. Let me hire you to do the services. But if you didn't really dive into what does marketing mean and how do you, dissect the consumer psychology and where should your traffic be coming from and how to build a business, then you're going to get a, BS service. And, at the end of the day, is it, their fault or your fault? I try to, blame myself for these things. And because I think that way, I just try to, learn about everything I can. And being focused is, direct experience. I've had businesses where we didn't stay focused. We were too, stretched too thin. Like the earlier example I gave you, we try to give too many services in a particular industry to too many types of clients. And it just didn't allow us to scale properly. So it's a lot of hard work, man. Consumers, even though this is a consumer-driven country, I think we have a lot of self-responsibility to become educated because you could very easily get bamboozled in this country, in my opinion. So it's a tough job, but you just have to, don't watch too much Netflix and BS shows on TV, in my opinion, and focus a little bit more on just empowering yourself with knowledge, with information, education.
Well, I love that advice. That is so true. Wasting time on the Real Housewives and Sports Center. So,
yeah,
I agree. Matej, I love you. You're awesome. And I'm really glad I got to meet you briefly. Really impressed with what you're doing, and I hope you have tremendous success. We're out of time, unfortunately. Blew through that fast. How do we find out more, follow you online, all of that?
Yeah, well, Jim, thank you for having me once again. And you can find me online. You can search for me on Instagram or YouTube at Matej_H_entrepreneur. And Matej, again, is spelled Matej, then _H_entrepreneur. Or you could simply go to digitalsciencemedia.com. And that's our marketing company, and that'll probably be the simplest way. But I'm fortunate enough to where my name, even though it's hard to pronounce, for the first time it's starting to have benefits. So if you type in Matej, Matej, on either YouTube or Instagram, it's likely that my Matej_H_entrepreneur profile will come up. So that's how you find me.
It is good to have a nice, unique name, isn't it?
Yes.
Matej, great stuff, and I hope you will come back again in a year and give us an update.
Fantastic stuff. I would love to be back. Thank you so much, Jim. I appreciate you having me on.
And we'll be back in just a second.